Hi. I got a camera, got a nice camera, and I could finally do videos like this now, so I don't have to use a garbage ass webcam that I was using before. But anyway, hold on. Before we get into anything, thank you guys for getting these to the goal. I don't have autofocus on, so it's not gonna focus. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I will make it worth it. I'll make it worth it with Brooklyn Broke the Universe. It's coming. It is coming. It is in the works. We got some cool stuff on the way. You can't see it because it's cut out a little bit, but there's the fan art wall. If you guys have fan art, just tag me in it and I will print it and put it on my wall. And just to catch you guys up, I haven't been doing a lot of reading lately. I would like to. I just haven't had a lot of drive or time to do so, but I've been reading this. It's a comic. It's barely reading, but like, you know, Gretzko Out of Office. It's pretty good. I recommend it. The art style is just like the show, but like a little bit better. And I think that's really cool. Anyway, you guys want to learn Blender, so that's what we're here for. Fired up. So you guys want to learn Blender, and I think that's great. If you want to learn Blender, that's really fucking cool, and I think you are making the right choice. Let's go. I want to show you guys some basics of Blender. Whoa, OBS is so cool. By the way, before we get into this, I'm not using the newest version of Blender. I don't use the newest version. I'm using 3.3.1. That's the version I use in all my videos currently, mainly because I have a shader that I use on all of my characters that I cannot use in newer versions. Another note, sorry, I'm not using the default key map. I'm using the 27X key map, which is the key map of Blender before version 2.8, which was their big overhaul of the UI. I do want to say that if there's any functions in here that I give a key map for that don't apply to you, there is a function to search. Search for me is space. I don't know off the top of my head what it is on the default key map, but I will check and I'll put it in text in the video so you can actually search properly. But anyway, let's get into this. How do you model? How do you make a model in Blender? Well, so what you're gonna, this is tradition. You're gonna select all by pressing A or Control A, and then you press delete. You delete everything. And then you add another cube. Don't ask me why. Microsoft cashback. I don't give a f. What you're gonna do is press tab. This puts you in edit mode. What do you do in edit mode, you ask? Well, you can do that. So edit mode is how you actually change the mesh itself, because in object mode, you can manipulate the scale, rotation, and the position of an object. But when you go into edit mode, you edit the object itself. So you can see this orange circle in the middle of this cube. That's kind of what's determining the origin of the object, right? But then you can see in edit mode, you can select the different vertices. You can also go here to select edges. And you can also go here to select faces. And also, you can make it so if you hold shift and you select another one, you can select faces as well as edges. You can do multiple, or you can select all three, or a mix of different ones. So you can do vertices and edges, or you can do faces, edges, and vertices. You can change that to however you want. Each one is gonna be better for specific situations, but for what I'm about to show you guys, faces might be your main thing. So if you go to face select, and you select a face, and you press E to extrude, basically what it's doing is it's pulling on the shape, right? Instead of having it so you're moving the face itself, you're pulling a new one out of the existing face. Do you see what I mean? So these edges are still there, but it also creates a new face. And that goes for doing this in any direction, as you can see, right? You see that? Do that one more time. There you go. You got a little blob here. I don't know what the fuck. Now, you can see on the left here, there's a move option, which lets you do this with the little gizmo. You just move it on different axes, right? You see that? Or you could do it along that. There's also a rotate function, which, you know, lets you rotate along the different axes as well. Or if you just select the circle, you just do it like that, where it's like along your view. This white circle will actually do it against the axis of your camera. So you can see like it changes depending on how you look at it. There's also one for scale. You can scale along these axes. And then there's also one that's just transform, which gives you all these options. What do? I only stay in move because you can access all these by pressing R to rotate and then typing the letter X to go on different axes, Y, or Z. You can also do it with scale by pressing S on X, Y, right? That's not going to do anything because it's on that axis, or Z. So that's what I do. I just press R and S to access scale and rotate. But also, if you don't want to do any of that, you can also press G to move. So if you go and rotate, right? If you're in the rotate option, you can press G to move instead of using the gizmo. I hope that's making sense. I might be going too fast, but I hope that makes sense. So we're gonna play around with the scale a little bit. And I'm going to show you guys some other functions. So if you go to edge select, there's one thing that I really like doing, which is a loop select. Basically what you have to do is, again, this is my key map. If you hold Alt and then you select an edge, it'll select a loop, and you see it's selected all those edges as opposed to just selecting one, scaling it. If you hold Alt and do that, it does a loop. If you just want to select multiple edges normally, if you just go to select it, it's not going to do it. If you hold Shift and then select, then you can select multiple edges at once. And also Control Z to undo, as per any program ever. There's also a bunch of different things you can play with here. I'm not going to go over every single thing. Absolutely not. That's going to take way too long. I've actually never used this before. Okay, that's pretty cool. But yeah, so what we're gonna do now is I'm gonna show you guys how to kind of make a character. It's gonna be very rough. Here's the thing. A lot of people, when they make a character model, I've seen a lot of people start with a sphere. Normally that would be the case for sculpting, I would assume. I don't do sculpting. That's not my thing personally. However, when it comes to poly building, which is what you guys saw me do, where you're like extruding and manipulating the faces one by one, start with a cube or a plane. A plane is just a flat square, right? But you know what a cube is. What we're gonna do here is we're gonna go into edit mode and we're gonna move the cube up. We go into edit mode to do that because if you do it in object mode, it moves it about the origin, but you don't wanna do that. You want the origin to be at the feet. So we're gonna assume that this is the head, right? So we're gonna drag that up so that if we go back into object mode and rotate, it's gonna rotate around where the feet would be. But anyway, we're gonna go in the front view. Oh no, that's not the front. This is the front view. You can see it at the top left there. And what we're gonna do now is make a loop cut. To do a loop cut, you press Control R, and you're just gonna do this. You're gonna see a yellow line pop up. You're gonna click. You can move it if you want to, but and you can have it in the center, but we want it in the center. And you can see, oh, I'm off now because I'm not center. Just right click. It puts it back in the center. You can see that there is now a loop in the center of the cube. And now what we're gonna do is select this and delete vertices. So you can see here there was different options. Delete face, it just makes a hole there. Delete edges, it leaves these edges here because it just deletes the edges that make up that face. But we're gonna delete vertices, so it deletes everything that is connected to that face. And now we're gonna apply a modifier. Go to modifiers here on the right side, the wrench, and then you're gonna see this. If you're using the newest version, it will not look like this for you, but you will have a search bar. What we're gonna do is add a mirror modifier. So you're gonna see here that it kind of makes the cube whole again. But if you go back into edit mode, you notice that you can't select the vertices over here because they're being mirrored on this axis. So now we're just gonna try to make a character or just like a kind of humanoid type figure. Now what I'm gonna do here to make the neck is press I, and you'll see what that does is it insets the face. It kind of like takes the face, makes a smaller version of it. And you can also achieve the same effect by pressing E, right clicking so it sets back to the normal position, and scaling it down. It's not quite the same effect because it's kind of like scaling it in a different way, but you know, my point still stands. And now what I'm gonna do is select this face here and delete it. And then we're gonna select this edge here. Now what we're gonna do is we're gonna change the pivot point. So this here is basically like, oh, it's rotating above the center of what is selected. You can see the gizmo is changing its location depending on what is selected. What we're gonna do is change this to 3D cursor. Now, what is the cursor? Well, it is this little red, white thing that you see here, and you can change where that is by, for me, it's left clicking. You can see it moves location. Now, if we make it about that, you can see the gizmo is where the cursor is. But we want it to be at 0, 0. And if you at any point move the cursor to set it back to its default position, you just have to press Shift C. Now the name of that option is center cursor and frame all. Just in case that does not work for you, you can search it and find it there. And now what we're gonna do is we're gonna do S, X, so it's along that axis about the cursor. You can see it's moving towards the center and away from the center. And the same will apply if you do Y, see that there. But we're gonna do X and we're gonna type the number 0. See, you don't have to use your mouse to get a value. You can also type one in. So if I select this one here and I press 2, and then you do SX2, you can see it doubles the scale. Same thing applies if I just do this here. S2, right? S2, it just doubles the size. Very simple. Same thing applies if you do 0.5 as a scale. you can type in exact values. So that way, if you need to scale something down to an exact number and you need to do it along multiple different objects and you need the same value for each one, you could just come up with the value and apply it to each object when you edit it. Now what we're gonna do is you could see that there, right? We're going to edit it so it's kind of smaller. S, Shift Z, 0. And basically what that's doing, you could see there, is it is scaling it along X and Y. So if you do Shift and then an axis, it'll scale it along every axis except for the one that you typed. So if you do Shift Y, it does Z and X. If you do Shift X, it does Y and Z. If you do Shift Z, it's Y and X. Which, by the way, if you don't know, Y is green, X is red, Z is blue. And you can see, there we go. And now we're gonna change the pivot point back to median. And then we're gonna press E to extrude, again, pull it down. And now you can see we have a head and a neck. Whoa! And now I'm gonna introduce you guys to another modifier that is what people use when it comes to modeling characters, and that is the subdivision surface modifier. What it's gonna do is it's gonna take this shape here, and it's going to cut the faces so that it multiplies the number of faces, but it also smooths it out. Looks a little weird, but we'll get there. We'll get there. Don't worry about it. You can see when you extrude, by the way, it also pulls this face in the middle here, but since it's being mirrored, we don't want that face there. We want to delete that. And you can see it kind of fixes the shape a little bit there. And now we're just gonna, extrude and edit the faces a little bit just to see, how you can make a body out of this. I'll do a little montage because I think I've introduced you guys to the basic controls and the basic ways to manipulate faces and edges and vertices. If you get confused at any point, just go back, and a lot of those controls will apply to everything. It'll apply to edges, faces, and vertices. So you might end up with something like this. This is a very, very basic, very simplified, just raw kind of character. Now, I did use a few things that I didn't show you guys, which I will show you now, because these are things that will really, really help you. Now, a few techniques I used was bevel. Now, beveling is basically like you take an edge, kind of smooth it out a little bit, like you sand the edge down. Imagine it like that. So like if I take these two edges here, and to bevel, you do Control B. You can see it kind of does that, and you can use the scroll wheel to change the number of cuts, let's say. For this, we're not going to use it there. What we are going to use it for is the elbow. So like you do the loop select there, alt right click or alt select, whatever it is for you, and then you do Control B, and we want to scroll up and down the wheel so that there are 3 loops instead of the 1. And then we're going to do this here so that they're a little bit further away, because the elbow then needs to be like spread out a bit. And I'm gonna add one more loop there just to be safe. Now, another thing that I used was an edge slide. An edge slide is basically moving the edge kind of along the face that it's on. I know that doesn't make a lot of sense when I explain it, but when I do it, you'll see. So to do so, you can press G once to adjust the location, but if you press it twice, you can do an edge slide. You see it kind of moves it along the faces it is connected to. And the same thing applies for a vertex, or a vertice, however you want to do it. It puts it along the edges that it is connected to. And now another thing that you're going to want to know is there's an option called shrink and flatten. Basically what it's going to do is, instead of making something just bigger like that there, it's actually just going to make it fatter. You know what I mean? Like you see that there, or just like thinner. Now to do that, instead of pressing S, you press Alt S to do so. And again, if that's not coming up for you, look up shrink flatten. One thing you're going to want for character editing is proportional editing. So now what we're going to do is we're going to apply these modifiers first. Let's assume that you've done all your rigging and stuff like that. Rigging is a thing we'll get into at another video. But what we're going to do is we're going to go to the mirror here. And we're going to choose a little drop down and click apply. Same thing for subdivision. So that way, when we go into edit mode, you can see the faces are selectable now. When you go to edit these, you notice since there's a lot of faces, making changes might be a little bit harder because the model's a little more detailed, but there's a thing called proportional editing. And if you click this little circle here to turn it on, you can also change the curve along which is you know, it is applied. And then you go to do something. You can see it like actually like pulls it and affects things that are surrounding it. And you can use your scroll wheel to change its radius, which is really cool. And if I try it with a sharp curve, you could see how it's affected there. Is this still a thing people do? Do people still do end cards? Is that a thing? Fuck it, I'm an animator. I'll do what I want. I don't know if you guys could tell by the way this video like turned out, but I'm not really great at doing tutorials. I'm not honestly that big a fan of making them, and not really because like they're hard to do. That's not really it. It's just like the principle of it. Because you know what I mean? Blender is a piece of software that is very, very versatile, and you can do many things in many different ways. So to me, when I make these videos and I like walk you through my process, it feels like I'm like projecting my process onto you. I mean, that is what it is, but that's not really the way I want it to be. You know what I mean? I want you to be able to have your own process, because that's what's fun, and not necessarily saying I won't help. Of course, I'll make videos that'll help, but when I do things like this where I like explicitly walk you step by step through it, it just doesn't feel right. I don't know if that is making any sense or if that's coming across properly. I know like the way I worded it sounds kind of selfish. That was not the intention. I hope you guys get what I mean, because just like finding your way to do something is infinitely more satisfying than using somebody else's way. You know what I mean? That's generally all I really wanted to say about this. I'll do more stuff talking about Blender. I think that's gonna be more entertaining than watching this. So that's really all I wanted to say in this end card. I still don't know if people do these, but yeah, follow my socials.